right. Good evening, everyone. I am so delighted to introduce the Sangha to Ed Sangetsu Sullivan. I have been enjoying the sound of the birds outside as we have been sitting in silence this past almost an hour. And I know that spring is coming. I see the little leaves coming up out of the trees. And I'm so glad that Ed can be with us here to to hearken in the spring and bring us some of the energy of spring. So please allow me to give a very brief introduction to Sangetsu and also share with you how we've connected personally. So Sangetsu is a sensei, a teacher in the White Plum Sangha lineage of Zen and a Soto Zen priest. He first started meditating over 40 years ago and has practiced a variety of meditation techniques. He received Dharma transmission from Roshi Bruce Seiryu Blackman in 2014. He later ordained as a Soto Zen priest, receiving Shukkei Tokudo in 2016 from Roshi Jules Shuzen Sensei. Sangetsu completed Denkai in 2021, and he is currently the resident teacher at the Red Rose Sangha in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. In 1985, he completed his doctorate in economics at the Penn State. He's a professor emeritus of business administration and economics at Lebanon Valley College, where he founded a program that teaches contemplative practices to students, faculty, and staff at the college. So I've known Sangetsu from my practice with him first at Mount Equity Zendo in central Pennsylvania, and he had come on several occasions to practice with us. I believe it was sesshin, maybe some other things as well. And after I left Mount Equity Zendo, I lived in York, Pennsylvania as a chaplain. I worked as a chaplain in a hospital. And Lancaster and York have an interesting kind of sister city relationship, or maybe I don't know if brother sister is the right way, but yeah, is that it? Okay, so there's the red roses and the white roses, and Lancaster is the red rose, and that's where we get Red Rose Sangha, and York is considered the white rose. But anyways, Sangetsu has invited me on a number of occasions to lead their Sangha at Red Rose in Lancaster. And I just so much enjoyed their practice there and meeting everyone there. So and so I wanted to extend the invitation for us to meet Sangetsu. So thank you all for being here this evening, and I look forward personally to hearing Sangetsu's wisdom come forward. So let's do I'll tell you what, let's go right into it, because I know time is of the essence. And so without further ado, I'm sure there's more you'd like to share about yourself, Sangetsu. Please feel free to do that. I have not nearly captured everything that who you are, and I'm sure there's more there. So I'm going to spotlight you so we can see you a little bit easier. There we go. There you go.
Okay. I've always wanted to be in the spotlight.
All right.
Okay, well, let's see. I guess I can see most of you. I've lost Stephen and Minnie and Heather, but okay, well, now I see Stephen. Now I see Heather. I don't know what happened to Minnie. But because I'm more than happy to share the spotlight with all of you. Anyway, my Dharma sisters and brothers, good evening. I was delighted to accept Daishin's invitation to speak with you. And it allows me in some small way to reciprocate for all the times he came to talk to our Red Rose Sangha here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I was thinking about it about 20 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, when I first met Daishin at a Zazen Kai that was offered by his esteemed teacher, Diane Minaj, at her Mount Equity Zendo in north central Pennsylvania. Then I met him again during a weekend retreat a few months later, and with his unfailing composure and kindness, he guided us through their chants and prostrations, and he made it all look effortless. As I worked my way up the ranks with the Zen community of Baltimore, where I did my training, I learned that guiding newcomers at a retreat is more akin to herding cats. It's those who work in service positions sacrifice much of their own meditation time and equanimity so that others may reap the benefit of a retreat. Now, I'm not sure if I ever thanked you for all of that, Daishin. I suppose a thank you that is 20 years late is better than never. So thank you for all that you did. And over the years, Daishin would visit our Sangha and give his insightful Dharma talks when we would hold Zazen Kais. And he'd stay overnight at our house. And I fondly remember the wonderful talks on my porch as we ate breakfast. So today I hope to talk to you and give you some of my Pennsylvania Dharma, which I hope is at least half as good as his. So when Daishin asked me to give a talk, I asked him if he had a particular topic in mind. And he said, you've been discussing social justice. And for me, at least, one aspect of social justice is right action. One of the steps, of course, in the Buddha's Eightfold Path. Well, some members of the Red Rose Sangha have marched and participated in various demonstrations in our hometown. I thought it might interest you to hear about our social outreach projects, which are, as I see it, one dimension of social justice. American Zen has, I think, long been on the forefront of the social engagement movement. And one of the popularizers of social action in my lineage was started by Bernie Glassman. Glassman Roshi, who died several years ago, he took an innovative approach to his Zen practice. He was an interesting guy. I met him a number of times. I'm very happy to say. While he was a college student, he came up with something akin to a bucket list. And he had 3 items on it. First, he wanted to live and work on a kibbutz in Israel for about a year, which he did upon graduating from college. And he wanted to live as a bum on the New York Bowery, which he also did. And finally, he went on and he wanted to seriously study Zen and practice it, which, he most certainly did. Between these various adventures, he raised a family, acquired a PhD in applied mathematics, and worked for the Boeing Corporation on the Mars mission project. So he was a pretty busy guy. And the life of a full-time monastic held, I think, little allure for him. So once he received Inca from his root teacher, Mayazumi Roshi, he became rather much sought after speaker within the American Zen community. He's said to have had two great Kensho experiences. And in one, he experienced the suffering of all beings. I think this is what drove his Zen activism. He first made his mark in this area by establishing the Greystone Bakery in Yonkers, New York. The original idea was to train the homeless on how to become bakers. So it was first conceived as a jobs training program, but it didn't end there. Many of the homeless had substance abuse problems. So successful job training would require a drug counseling program, but it didn't end there. He wanted to provide housing for his homeless trainees. And somehow he and his followers raised money to buy an apartment building for them, which they renovated. But it didn't end there. Some of his homeless trainees had children, so now they needed to establish a daycare program. Well, you can see how this thing just spiraled, one thing after another, And eventually the Greystone Bakery became quite successful and even drew national attention. It's still in existence today, and not too long ago, I enjoyed one of their delicious, famous fudge brownies. I think of the Greystone Project as an example of right action in the form of social outreach spawned by the karmic ripples which continue to grow in ever widening concentric circles. Eventually, those ripples lapped onto our Sangha's shores. The Red Rose Sangha here in Lancaster has been around, been in existence for, I would guess about 30 years. It was founded originally by a professor at a local college. He originally set up a meditation group for his students. However, some of the locals found their way to the meditation meetings. And well, while his original cohort of students graduated, some of the local meditators stuck around. So the Sangha began to evolve, but it stayed in existence. When I joined the group, we had no teacher and belonged to no lineage, no Zen lineage. And on a good Sunday night, when we usually sat, we might have, 6 or 7 people show up. After about 15 years of training with the Zen community of Baltimore, I received Dharma transmission and became a lay teacher in the White Plum lineage. Later, I would go on and become a fully ordained Soto Zen priest and the spiritual director of the Red Rose Sangha. And we've slowly grown. Right now, we average about somewhere between 15 to 17 people on a Sunday night, which is when we typically hold our sitting in service. If everyone ever showed up, there'd be about 20 of us, I guess. Took a long time to get up to that number 20. As our numbers grew, engaging in social outreach projects became feasible. Our first project was to purchase backpacks and fill them with items for the homeless. We really didn't know what to give them. So we contacted the local experts, the Lancaster Coalition for the Homeless. And they quickly gave us a wish list and were willing to distribute the laden backpacks. When we asked when they'd like it, they asked, well, when would you like to get started? So our little Sangha, raised $1,145. Then we added another $55 from our treasury to round up the project budget to $1,200. We wanted to write a nice round number. We figured it would make doing long division easier. We were trying to determine the number of items we purchased. Now, fortunately, our Sangha is blessed with some very savvy shoppers who really know how to stretch a buck. So, armed with their lists of toothbrushes and socks and underwear and other sundry items, our purchasing agents, that's what we wanted to call them. It sounded more official, I guess, scoured the internet and the dollar bargain stores for the best prices. And one of the members volunteered his garage to serve as a collection point as we awaited the purchases to arrive. A few days later, some Sangha members, decked out in masks and gloves because of the pandemic, arrived at the garage and prepared the backpacks. We have photos of them. It might even be on our website. We're trying to rework the website and update a few things. Anyway, we thought we could fill 30 backpacks. We filled 35. Minor victory. Okay? Once done, the backpacks were taken by the Homeless Coalition, and distribution started that very day. So from start to finish, our project took less than 3 weeks to complete. Now, did we solve the homeless problem in our town? We hardly made a dent. There's much more to be done. But that's not the point. We did what we could by consciously, or maybe unconsciously, using the Zen peacemakers' tenets of bearing witness, not knowing, and then taking action. Now, bearing witness to the homeless problem is easy. Just open your eyes when you walk around town. We knew what we wanted to do, but we didn't know how to do it. So that's when we got in touch with the local experts, those who were actually working with the homeless on a daily basis. Once they came up with their lists, suggestions, we acted. One of the things we demonstrated, at least to ourselves, is that a small group of highly motivated people can accomplish something, even in the time of a pandemic. Now, since then, we've done several other homeless projects, including providing sleeping bags and mats. Most recently, we managed to raise $1,500 for the purchasing of medical supplies for Ukrainian refugees. If you like later, we could talk a little bit about that. But before I end this little litany of the things that we've done at my Sangha, I'd like to contextualize social outreach from a Zen perspective. Every day when I sit, I recite the 4 Bodhisattva vows. And at least my version goes like this: sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. And as I see it, social outreach programs are a way of fulfilling that vow. By doing so, we're not preaching the Dharma, we're living it through our actions. What the Buddha would have called right action. If you're inclined toward right action through social outreach, but don't know what to do or how to begin, first I'd suggest just sitting with the question. You could treat it like it was a koan. Occasionally raise the question while you're meditating, and also throughout the day when you're off the cushion. I believe by just raising the question, soon you'll become aware of a multitude of possibilities. Well, once you've sat with the question for a while, pick a project that's doable given the resources at hand. I remember the American folk singer, Pete Seeger, maybe some of you remember him. He once said, I think the world is going to be saved by a million small things. I think he was right. Next, if possible, you talk to people who are currently working on the problem. Believe me, they'll be happy to speak with you and possibly even work with you. And from there, you'll know how to proceed. You know, personally, over the years, I have marched and protested, but ultimately, I found actually doing something to directly address a problem was more satisfying. The late Charlotte Joko Beck once said, I'm not saying go out and save the world. But people who practice regularly do change the world. A good practice changes anyone who comes into contact with it. Our Zen practice spawned karmic ripples. Most of the time, we don't know their effects. I'm sure Bernie Glassman never thought that his actions would spur a small Zen Sangha to provide assistance to homeless people in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. But our practice does change us and those who come in contact with us. I think this is true. Or to quote Bernie, that's just my opinion, man. So if you have some questions or anything you'd like to talk about, let's have at it.
Thank you so much, Sangetsu. It was really helpful, I think, for me especially, but I'm sure others too. I just want to let everybody feel free to open up to questions these last about 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. I've been reading Bernie Glassman's Bearing Witness, and I've also read Instructions of a Cook. And I've been feeling, I've been doing service for on and off. I learn more about myself every time I do a service project. Yesterday and today, I don't know if I have a question, but I feel like I'm burning out. And it's not burning out. There's something that for me has to change. And I know it's internal. I have a habit of wanting to do big things. And I know that Mother Teresa said, do small things with great love. And so I'm kind of moving in that direction. Can I just say hello to a neighbor who needs someone to, just needs someone. And to me, that's service also. I just spoke with a neighbor who needs gloves, and I volunteer at the Salvation Army, and I said, I will bring you some gloves. But this voice says, can't you do something bigger? Come on now, let's get out there and really, So I'm finding myself that, that's my ego, that's my self-cherishing, whatever it is. So yesterday and today, I've had a real kind of almost feeling of nauseous in myself, of just wanting to back off and find a new way of starting again. So I guess that's a question. I guess sometimes we have to start again and see where that goes. I don't know how else to put it.
Well, there are a couple of things. I know there's a quote that's often attributed to the Trappist monk Thomas Merton, who talked about there is a violence that we do ourselves, at least those of us who are engaged in social action, and that we burn out, which does no one any good. I think one of the things, first, it's wonderful that you're recognizing burnout, okay? And, you mentioned Mother Teresa, okay. There is a story about her when, these young, very well-meaning people would come to India and told her that they wanted to help her, to work with her. She would ask them if they had a spiritual practice. And she said, if you didn't, you wouldn't last very long in this game. And it's true. I mean, we should turn to our practice, our Zazen, and also refuge in the Sangha, right? You you're not alone. Zen is such a solitary practice. That's why we need a Sangha, so that it reminds us that, well, yeah, I thought I was crazy, but now I see all these wonderful other crazy people around, so maybe I'm not crazy after all. And it renews your spirit, but there are times you have to pull back. And if you want to accomplish something, don't think you have to do it alone. And don't do it alone. First of all, you might just need to take a break. Just stop. Just sit, be with your Sangha, renew yourself, renew your spirit. But beyond that, then look for a group of people with whom you share a common ethos and direction. And just contribute what you can to that group. I mean, that's the way we could have never done it. But I could have never done what we accomplished by myself. Just no. But yeah, there are people, and when you're tired or when you're faltering, there's someone else there to pick it up and keep it moving forward. So there is great things can be accomplished by groups. And we can define the word Sangha, I think, very broadly. It doesn't necessarily have to be a group of Zen practitioners. It could be, well, you're working with a group now, Salvation Army. How wonderful, right? And cut yourself a break. We're often much too hard on ourselves. And I don't know what that accomplishes except maybe burnout. I don't know if I've really given you much in terms of advice, but this has been my experience and what I've seen with others. It's just part of learning to love yourself.
Do you have any advice about trying to quiet the voices in your mind, when you're trying to focus, maintain that focus? And it seems like the one thing that kind of mostly does it for me is just, the monologue of breathe in and breathe out, just to try and get grasp of that. Do you have any other words of advice about that?
Drugs and alcohol. Just kidding. You can't really quiet your mind. Your mind has to quiet itself. And that's when it's damn good and ready. That's why you sit with your breath, whether you're just watching your breath in some way or, counting your breath, whatever. And the sheer act of sitting still and following your breath in one way or another begins to slow down that monkey mind. Now, you're sitting for 10 minutes, that ain't gonna work, okay? You're gonna have monkey mind at the beginning of 10 minutes and at the end of it. I often tell my students when they're starting, well, 10 minutes is a good place to start because most people aren't used to sitting quietly and doing, well, not much of anything except following some object like their breath. But then you begin to slowly build it up. And generally speaking, it has been my experience and the experience of my students that after about 20 or 25 minutes, let's say you decide you'll sit for 30 minutes, it's like that last 5 minutes, things are starting to just get just right. You're hitting that sweet spot, and then what happens? The bell rings, right? all that tranquility, equanimity, samadhi out the window. Not really, but you walk for a few minutes and then you can usually recover it rather quickly, but you can't force it. You cannot force the mind to stop thinking. It has to do it on its own when it's ready. And sometimes, you'll have sits where it's never ready. And you think, wow, that was a wasted 30, 60 minutes or whatever. No, it wasn't. No. Actually, what I have found, even when you think your mind isn't settling, you are not entering into some kind of a somatic state of consciousness. You are. And I can remember this vividly happening once. I was sitting pardon me. I was sitting at home upstairs and the door closed and getting nowhere fast, right? Good case of monkey mind. And suddenly my wife called up to me. Something happened, whatever. And I was so startled. I mean, I nearly hit the roof. It was, and I was in a deeper state of meditation than I realized. Even though the mind was still turning away, it happens slowly and perceptibly, but yeah, it begins to calm down. And even when you think that it's not, it's better than if you just sat there and, did a crossword puzzle. And another thing, though, is that sometimes you'll sit and it will be just wonderful. It'll be almost like a moment of grace. And then you're done and you wake up the next day and you think, oh boy, that was just the best. I can't wait to get back to my cushion. And you do, and it's terrible. It's just pure monkey mind. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And don't set up the goal of saying, yeah, I'm going to have a real good sitting. There's no such thing as a bad sit. And that takes a long time to really come to terms with and to believe. There's no such thing as a bad sit. That's why don't concern yourself with trying to shut down your thoughts. Our minds were constructed to pump out thoughts like our hearts pump out blood. It's just the way it is. But yes, they will quiet down if you sit long enough and practice day after day. Just keep at it. Some days are going to be very nice. Some days are going to be, and most days will probably be just kind of so-so. And some days will just be terrible. But no, they're not terrible. They're not so-so. It's just sitting. I'm glad I'm not trying to, sell you on something.
Sangetsu, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
Anything else? Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And on both, you answered questions that both had to do with action and practical action, as well as contemplation. How do we do this practice in the world? And some of the advice, I think we'll definitely take that to heart. And then the other piece is, what do we do internally? What do we do about these thoughts and monkey mind? So those are kind of the two halves of practice. One is practicing in the world. The other one is coming back to ourselves. So I really appreciate that balance there that you offered us in our Sangha. So on that, thank you so much for meeting us this evening, our little group here, and really hope you will join us again sometime.
It
And
was a joy. It was a
um,
joy, and I'd be happy to.
wonderful, wonderful. And just a thank you to everybody who joined us this evening. Thank you so much. We'll have this recorded so others in the Sangha, there was others in the Sangha that wanted to be here, but unfortunately are not able to. So we have it recorded for them, and we'll share it, and hopefully people will benefit widely. Thank you. That ripple out effect. All right. And if anybody wants to get in touch with you, can they? Is that all right?
Oh, by all means,
Yeah,
yes.
please.
You can give them my email address. That's probably
Sure.
the best way. Or if you ever want to, have nothing to do on a Sunday night, feel free to sit with us. We have a similar format. We sit for 30 minutes, do a little short kinhin, and another 30 minutes, then someone gives a Dharma talk. And we usually just have kind of the equivalent of a little spiritual circle, just to check in. This is something we started to do because of the pandemic, and wanted to know how people were doing, and to reinforce that sense of community.
Right.
So yeah, by all means, yeah, feel free to contact me, or if you want to sit on a Sunday night, we're there.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank
You're
you. Thank you
welcome.
again, Sangetsu. Thank you, everybody. And you guys have a wonderful evening. We'll just close it with a very short dedication. May all beings be safe. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy.